Hi there, I'm Dr. Deborah Leveroy at Neurobox. I'm delighted to be here with our sales associate Becky today. And Becky has agreed to come and share her experience with neurodiversity and women's health. Hi, Becky. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to hopefully helping raise awareness about endometriosis and neurodiversities.
Yes, I know this is something you're particularly passionate about, and you've done some training on it already, haven't you, I think?
Absolutely, and I'd love to grow the awareness out there as well and get people talking about this in their workplaces.
So can you tell me why you're interested in this subject? Tell me a little bit about your experience, if you don't mind, personally with your health, with women's health.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with endometriosis back in 2021, and I had unknowingly been experiencing symptoms since I was 16. I kind of didn't think anything of it at the time, and it was always classed down to a bad period. I would often experience nausea, vomiting, fainting. It was quite a bad time kind of going through it. And I'd often have to get picked up by a parent from school. And unfortunately, it followed me kind of to the workplace as well. I was out on the road training a lot of the time, and I'd find a couple of days a month that I would not be able to leave the house with the fear of feeling nauseous, feeling sick. I had to be somewhere safe. I couldn't get on the train or anything like that. And it got to the bad point where I had to get picked up for an event as well. So I'd gone out to learn about new technology out there, but the pain was so severe. Paracetamol, ibuprofen was not touching or taking the edge off it. And I could not sit there any longer. And I was very lucky and fortunate to be in Cambridge with someone that was able to come and pick me up at that time. So it kind of peaked about 5 years ago, where it started to get really, really bad. And I knew I couldn't stay like going through these symptoms without an answer. It caused a massive decline on my mental health. The anxiety increased because I didn't know what was going on. None of my other friends were going through this. They'd be able to brush it off. They wouldn't be crippled over in pain, unable to move or anything like that. So I knew something wasn't right, really. And obviously, it started to affect work, which I really didn't want to happen as well.
Of course. And how was work in terms of, did you feel able to share it with your employer at the time? How did that conversation go?
Yeah, I was able to share. It was quite a hard conversation to share because what was there to share apart from, I don't know what's going on, but something is not right, is all I was able to say with it. That I was going through appointment after appointment after appointment. Again, you then become so worried that you're taking so many like hours off work to go to doctor's appointments to try and get some sort of answer. And it's quite hard. You can't give the workplace a reason for why you're struggling. All you know is that it's going to happen once a month or it might happen in between. It was a really hard thing to kind of explain to someone. And even to, I suppose, like another colleague as well, if you're having a bad day, to explain to them, or if there was a manager that who knew about the situation and they weren't available, then you had to tell another manager that this was something that was reoccurring. So it was really hard. They were understanding and obviously allowed me to have the time off for those appointments. But when you don't know what's going on yourself, you can't really tell that to your employer either.
Mm, of course. And how was that process of getting a diagnosis?
So challenging. So challenging. I was having doctor's appointments once a month for at least 2 years, trying to get the help, trying to get the referrals, saying that something is not right. And I'd kind of go and bounce from different doctors. Our GPs wouldn't keep you with the same doctor, you'd bounce about different ones. And each time you'd go in and they'd sit down and be like, you're just anxious. You're an anxious person. You're overthinking it. You need medication for
Right.
anxiety. And I kind of sitting there like, I know I'm an anxious person. I know I overthink. I've accepted that. We work on that. But there is something wrong with me. You have got to help. Like, I am in this pain. I shouldn't be having to kind of like fall asleep on the bathroom floor so I'm close to what I need or something like that. Like, this is not normal to go through. And it got to the appointment, got to a really, really bad appointment that I had with a GP, that I said, right, that's it. I've had enough. I'm going to go private. I've got the savings. I don't particularly want to go down this route, but I've got the savings and I need to know, and I need to know now. And I didn't realise how important kind of getting that diagnosis was for me. So as soon as I had gone private, the gentleman that I saw was completely different, sat down, and he was pretty sure it was going to show up in one of two places. So it was either going to be on my ligaments or it was going to be my ovaries. And he was fairly confident of this. I'd tried all the other stuff that they'd recommended. So I was doing weight bearing exercises, I was stretching, I was having sports massage on my hips to make sure they were okay. I was ticking all the boxes that I should do before I went privately. And just before we went into our first lockdown, I had my MRI scan privately, and I got that call. Actually, it was a day that lockdown was announced, that I got the call from him, and it was like, yeah, you are showing that you've got endometriosis on your ligaments. And it was quite an eye-opening experience. And I think everyone kind of thought that I was going to be sad about it. But for me, it was an answer to all of those questions. It was an answer to the anxiety, the overthinking, that I was right. There was something going on, but also there is help and kind of management out there to help with the pain that I was experiencing. So it was kind of that answer of like, okay, I can now move forward with it. And there was something there that wasn't quite right. Obviously, over the years, I have then struggled with my management of endometriosis, because it is quite a hard thing. There is no cure for endometriosis, which is a lifelong condition that I'm going to have to potentially face most days. And a lot of the time, it is usually only managed by contraception and diet-based things. So I've had to say goodbye to gluten, which is, I miss my bread. And I've then struggled with that kind of management side over it. So I then tried to go back through the NHS to get more help, and again, to get back into the NHS to get that further support. Took over a year to get back in, to go and see a consultant who then did put me on further medication that does help manage it as well. But it's got a combination of different management techniques that I've had to pop into place, and it's still quite a lot of understanding. I've had the diagnosis for 3 years now, and I'm still going through a lot of discovering this myself as I go along, and how and what can help me through it as well.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned that when the doctor called you, that he said, we can see that it's in the ligaments. Can you explain what that means for us?
Yeah, so endometriosis, the way I like to describe it is like a callus on your hands. So it is your line of your womb growing somewhere where it shouldn't. And obviously, every month we menstruate and it sheds. When you get endometriosis, this grows on places where it shouldn't, but there is no way for it to shed. So it continues to build up like a callus would on your hand, but it's growing somewhere where it can't shed. So obviously mine is on my ligaments that surround my womb. So therefore it's going to have repercussions around that, but also kind of on other bodily functions that you might expect as well. So it just can't go anywhere. Therefore it keeps building. It's going to build that discomfort. So it affects you in so many different ways. And it all, again, a lot of the time, the challenge of getting a diagnosis with this is it is often misdiagnosed, as in it can affect kind of normal bodily functions like going to the loo, and this can often be misconstrued as like IBS or something like that. It can be put down to other things as well. So it's a hard thing to get a diagnosis for and kind of understand, but it can grow in so many places too. Like, it's often found in fallopian tubes and ovaries, which then obviously are going to affect your fertility. It can grow in your urethra, it can grow in your bowels, it can grow in kidney tracts, it can grow in so many other places, and it all depends on the person, on how they manage it and what symptoms they experience, and how it can vary so widely, really.
And in terms of, you mentioned that the specialist had put you on medication. Is there any side effects with that medication?
No, not that I've noticed. It does help with managing the pain element of it, but this has to obviously be taken in side effect, like in conjunction with contraception. Which obviously contraception, we know there is the repercussions, the side effects with the hormone kind of changes and everything going through. So a lot of the time the anxiety can increase. Obviously there's weight gaining involved and everything like that. So it is still a lot of kind of management and taking each day and working out again, I suppose, what contraception is then right for you, that those symptoms are going to be managed better with those side effects and everything like that. But as for the other medication, it's half a little tablet every day to help manage that pain. And as I said, I cut out gluten, which I am devastated about, but I often find that that means I don't bloat. So before I used to bloat really badly, like my belly can grow up to 7 inches, which I didn't realize. One day I felt absolutely massive and it had just ballooned. And I was so uncomfortable with it. And actually reducing down that gluten helps a lot with kind of managing and stabilizing it.
Wow. Great. I'm pleased to hear that. And you mentioned that you self-identify as someone with dyslexia and possibly ADHD traits. Do you think that these experiences have impacted your endometriosis journey in any way?
I think in a way it's like exacerbated kind of the neurodiversities in it. Like I have always struggled with reading, writing, and the spelling kind of elements of it, and kind of having to absorb the content within. And I often find with the kind of endometriosis, I have bad days. I can't say that I'm going to be the medication and all the steps that I go through every day is going to help. I will have days that my anxiety will increase, or I will feel bloated, I will feel swollen, the brain fog sets in, I still get the nausea occasionally and everything like that. And I find when I have these days where I kind of flare and I'm uncomfortable, that instead of reading something like twice to absorb the content within, I'm having to read it four or five times, or something that I'm used to writing. Like my reports from my assessments can take me a lot longer because I'm getting stuck with the words. And obviously we're in an assistive technology world, and as much as I've got some of the assistive technologies to help with these elements, I still find it a real challenge on those bad days. And again, I am someone that much prefers to articulate and talk about something and discuss it. But even found that on those bad days, for me to be able to articulate myself correctly, I will often stumble over my words. It becomes a lot more disjointed. I can't get my thoughts out clearly. I can really feel it affecting other elements then on a bad kind of day. I'm obviously the mind with the kind of anxiety element of this as well. My brain is going at 150 miles an hour constantly, which means I will often miss words out. So I think I've said something again, either in writing or even in communication times, and that will be where I kind of fall over and I will get stumped with it. So I really think that having a neurodiversity and endometriosis, it will exacerbate it. It will make things potentially more challenging for you when you are having a bad day, when you're having to deal with the pain, the uncomfortable feelings that you're getting, the nausea. Everything is going to become more of a challenge. More of those coping strategies that you have built yourself go out the window. They're not going to work, and it's kind of readapting for it as well.
And do you know of any research or people talking about this link between specifically endometriosis and neurodiverse traits?
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of research myself into this, and it looks like there are starting to be more research going into neurodiversities and endometriosis. So, for example, there's a study out there that showed that women with endometriosis were twice as likely to have ADHD than those without the condition, which I thought was absolutely fascinating.
Wow.
And there's other studies linking kind of neurodiversities and endometriosis with genetics. And there are other neurodiversities that are kind of developed, such as like depression and anxiety along the way. It takes on average a woman 7.5 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. So to keep going through those knockback appointments with the GPs or the process of it, depression, anxiety comes kind of part and parcel, unfortunately. And it's then coping with that for the rest your kind of life as well. You've gone through that. It's something that you're going to have to cope with. So again, there's more research coming into the anxiety and depression with endometriosis. There are other links as well, because endometriosis is an inflammatory condition where it's been linked to a higher link with fibromyalgia and things like that. So there's plenty more research going out there, but I think there's such a need for more research, to be on it, to be fair, because I think, and one of the reasons I really want to speak about this and kind of get everyone talking about it is people shouldn't sit and suffer in silence about it. It does come under the Equality Act, and there are adjustments that can be made for someone in the workplace that they feel supported with the conditions and how assisted technology or coaching or awareness about the condition might help. And I really would like to start getting employers talking about it with their employees again. 1 in 10 women suffer with endometriosis, which is a staggering number. And by raising awareness, they shouldn't feel like they should have to hide or mask this anymore, that there is actually support on this. And as an experienced kind of workplace assessor, I always thought about starting and looking at what a bad day might entail. What strategies have they got so far? And what does a bad day look like? And how can we develop putting other technology or other support systems in place to help that individual in the workplace? So I think I'm hoping really that there's going to be a growth with the research that is going into endometriosis. And by talking about this, that we can raise awareness throughout the workplaces to help women feel comfortable and feel supported with this condition and neurodiversities.
Thank you, Becky. I'm sure if somebody is listening to this, either it's an employee or an employer, they're definitely going to act. Can you talk a little bit, just before we wrap up, about what kind of adjustments you would potentially you could recommend to an employee? And also, if someone's listening to this and they think, oh, that is all sounding really familiar, I think I might have endometriosis. Where should they go? So a little bit of signposting.
Absolutely. So I think adjustment wise, if you're going to look at kind of like the brain fog days or the uncomfortable days, it's the flexibility over working. Obviously, we have all got used to the remote working, which is a lovely way of working, but we're seeing more organisations asking people to come back into the workplace now. And I suppose it's having that flexibility for them if a bad day was to occur, that they have the flexibility that they can work from home when needed, when they've got the resources around them to help. Again, brain fog can be a massive one, is unable to decipher a task because of the pain that you're in. So again, you could look at like the mind mapping tools that are out there to help plan, to help structure, to help see where you need to go and work first. I also am a massive fan of coaching and building those strategies up. So I think that is somewhere also to have a little look at and sit down and work out what strategies you've got so far and where they can be developed further, and to really build on kind of those and what a bad day potentially might look like, but also using those strengths that you've got to help go through them. So I think there's a lot that can be done, but this is all, again, one-to-one is needed for this assessment to work out what the best support is for that person. As for the signposting, if this is sounding familiar, there are plenty of websites out there that might be able to help, but my first suggestion would be to go to your GP, book appointment and explain the symptoms that you're feeling, and ask for that referral to go off and get yourself kind of in the system with the process. I've had another close colleague of mine who, as soon as she thought something might be up, she was like, can I sit down with you? We had a chat about it and she got herself straight into that system, and she got in. She's actually had surgery on hers to try and help reduce the symptoms. But I suppose it's the support around you. She felt comfortable enough to be able to talk to me and say, I think something's wrong. Can you help me? And I was able to then go with her to any HR meetings that she needed as well. So she felt supported. But I think to get to your GP and get that referral in place is the best thing to do.
Thank you, Becky. Really appreciate you sharing your experience and also just the tips that you've given us, and yeah, just where to go next is just really insightful and helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and I hope this helps.